Welcome back to the EJ Ward FuelView training series. In this video, we're going to be going over the at-a-glance screen. So to get there, we don't have to do absolutely anything. We can just look at here because it's our landing page, which is the at-a-glance page. If you ever want to get back to this and you're somewhere else in FuelView, you can drop down the status folder here and go to at-a-glance. So the first thing that we have is our system overview, and we're going to go ahead and go through this from left to right. So underneath the system overview, we have our version. This is the version of FuelView. You can also check the version of FuelView at the bottom right-hand side. It shows your version and then the build number for each version. And these two should always match. You have your system measurement, whether it's going to be US customary or it's going to be metric. You have your active employees list. You have your active vehicles list. Then you have how many transactions were done today, how many vehicles were fueled today. And with these two lists that we have for your active vehicles and active employees, if you click on these, it's going to go straight to the employees list or the employees grid. And this one will go straight to the vehicles grid. Below that in blue, we have kind of issues that might be going on with the system. So we have how many terminals are offline. If we click on this, it's going to give us a list, a pop-up list of all the terminals that have an issue or that are offline. If I want to go into these, I can click on this little pen and paper. I can click on this little pen and paper icon next to it to go straight to that terminal. So once I click that, it's going to pop open with that terminal record, and then I can rectify that if I want to put it back online, if I want to change something with it. This one looks like it's just not communicating, so I would have to figure out what's going on with this terminal, and then I can go ahead and close it. So this is just terminals that are set for offline. And terminals that might not be communicating, I show that there's no last connection for any of these terminals, so it's showing that these are basically offline and not communicating. The next one we have are pumps offline. So if I click into this one, it's going to show the pump that we have offline, and we can do the same exact thing that we did with the terminals. We can go ahead and click on this pen and paper icon. It goes to the pump. I show that this pump is offline, so I'm going to go ahead and check that and then save it right from here. So it's really an easy way to take care of a pump if it's offline or any of these issues, rather than having to go through the menu system and get to the pump record, find that pump record, go into the pump record, and then do everything that I just did. So once that's been saved, and I hit OK here, I can go ahead and hit the refresh button, which is at the top right-hand side of each section. So it's your little recycle symbol here. I can go ahead and click on that, and I can show that I don't have any pumps offline anymore, and it's no longer a link. I also have my tanks below reorder level, which work the same way. It shows all of my different tanks that are below our reorder level, and if I click on the pen and paper, it's going to open up that tank record. Below that, I have my terminal pump board switch status. So the pump board is something that is inside of the terminal, and we can have one or two of these, and we typically call these a 5-hose board because each board can take up to 5 different pumps or 5 different hoses. And for here, we have ones that are in bypass, ones that are in off, or in an invalid state. An invalid state is usually what they're in when they first come in and come up online, or they've been installed into the FuelView system, but they haven't been physically installed and talked to yet. So I can look for these that are in an invalid state, which means they're neither in bypass, off, or auto. It's not going to show any ones that are in auto because that's a normal function and that's how it should be working, but it is going to show any of the terminals that have pumps that are off or in bypass. So these all basically haven't communicated to the system yet to tell it what its status is. For instance, if I look at this one in bypass, I can see all the pumps that are in bypass, and I can see that it's terminal number 1, pump number 2 is in bypass. There's not really anything we can do with this here. We would have to go on site and physically take that switch and take it from bypass to auto. Now, the reason why we put this here is because you want to know if somebody's been putting the pump into bypass and they shouldn't be. Sometimes it's perfectly normal. Somebody's working on the site, something's happening to the site, so they just put it into bypass for a while, or an emergency is going on. But most of the time your system should be in auto, so these should all 3 be 0. Below that, we have our fuel transaction processing errors. So what happens with a transaction with our Ward 4 system, and this is for Ward 4 FCTs mainly, is we have transactions that come in an encrypted state. They go into our database, and then they get processed by another program called Ward Process Transaction, which we'll go over here in just a little bit. If there's a problem actually getting it processed, it's going to be rejected. So if there's an issue with it processing, then it's going to reject that, and then we'll see that here on the right hand side of how many rejected we have. If the service is down or it's not able to actually get to that one yet, let's say you had 1,000 transactions come in a second and it's going through them, it's going to show that number in the unprocessed, which means it hasn't touched it yet. If either of these numbers are more than 0, then we can typically look inside of the transaction processing errors at the alerts, alarms, and errors on the bottom right hand side, and it's going to give us any issues that it has. It's going to give us the date and time, the category, the description, and it's going to tell us in plain English what the error really is, so we can rectify that error, or you can give EJ Ward tech support a call and we can take a look at it and see if we can rectify that issue and get that transaction processed. Below that on the left-hand side, we have our communication services. Now, these are the main communication services that we have. We do have some more, so this is all the communication services that are online in your system. So right now it says what the service name is. We have the machine that the service is running off of, and then we have the status, whether it's up or down. And then we also have the recycle logo here on the left-hand side, the 2 arrows. That's so that we can restart the service if we ever need to restart it. So we have WordCom, which is how you call the terminal from the website itself, and that goes through the WordCom service. We have Word Process Transaction, which takes transactions from Ward 3 and Ward 4 FCTs and processes them into your system. We have the Online Listener, which talks to the Ward 4 terminals constantly back and forth. We have our CanSiever Listener, which is used for Ward 4 CanSievers. We have our Event Parser, which takes all the data that the Ward 4 CanSiever gets and it puts it into our system. And then we have our Scheduled Task service, which deals with all the emails that are automatically sent from the FieldView system out to other people. All of mine are up, and if they were to ever go down, then I would see issues under the service alerts down here on the bottom right-hand side for alerts, alarms, and errors. And we'll go over those in just a little bit. The next section I have is transaction history here at the middle. And with this one, I show all of my fuel types as separate grids. So each fuel type has its own grid, and it gives me today's fuelings, yesterday's fuelings, the last 7 days, and the last 30 days. It will give me the number of transactions, the number of vehicles for those transactions, and then it will give me the quantity in gallons. Now, if you have liters or something like that, it's going to change the gallons to whatever your unit of measurement is. So if I look through here, I have a couple of them within the last 30 days, but I don't have really any that have been any recently done. And I can go through each different type of fuel that I have. The more fuel types that you have that have transactions with them, the more boxes that you're going to get and the more you're going to be able to scroll down. If you ever want to refresh this one, you can just hit that refresh button at the top right-hand side. So below that, I have my alerts, my alarms, and my errors. So the first one is system alerts. These are system-wide alerts for pumps, things like that. This is your hardware, essentially. I don't have any errors for this one, so it's not going to show anything, but it's going to give you a date and time, the category of what type of error it is. It's going to give you a full description of it, and it's going to give you how many issues that you have, so how many occurrences. You're also going to have the ability to open that up in a pop-up window that's going to give you more detail about that information. The next tab that I have is service alerts. In this one, I have with services. Basically, if someone stopped the service or if it stopped on its own, it's going to give me this information. You can see here that I've actually had this go on, so I do have some of this going on inside of my system. And a lot of these were just me inside of the system turning it off and turning back on itself. I have TLS alarms. Anytime they have an alarm with them, it's going to come through. So I have my site, the TLS number, the date and time, the category, and then we have a description. So here I have a liquid sensor alarm. I can go ahead and click on this details tab. And now I can view that entire alert on my system. So I can see all of the information if there's any more information than what's shown here on that one alert. And I can do that with any of these alerts down here. The next one I have is my transaction processing errors. And this is the one that I was talking about before, where if you have any unprocessed or rejected transactions, they're going to show up here and you're going to be able to see the details of each error to see if you can try to fix it yourself, or you can at least give your EJ Ward support technician a little bit of heads up and go, hey, here's what it shows in the transaction processing errors. That way they can get right to fixing the issue. At the top right-hand side, we have our database status. Now, this is typically mainly for DBAs and for EJ Ward support. This is not something that you really need to know, and it's something that shouldn't be changing too often. So the first thing that you have is a server, and this is a server type. With our FuelView 4 system, we support Oracle or SQL Server, and this one's running off a SQL Server here. We have the size of the database. It's going to be the actual size of the data, and then the size of the log itself. We have a recovery model, and this is all set up in SQL. This isn't something that you can change from FuelView or anything like that. And then we have our last full backup, and when that was done, we have the last differential backup, and when that was done, and we have the last log backup, and when that was done. Below that, we have our top 5 fragmented tables. And this is a lot like for those of you that have had to defragment a disk or something like that in Windows, this is kind of the same thing. So here I have a transactions table that has 96.2% fragmentation. So what I want to do is re-index this table, and I want to do the same thing with any of these guys that's pretty much, I would say, over 60 to 75%. I want to re-index these. What this is going to cause is it's going to cause reports to run a little longer. It's going to cause the screens to come up a little bit slower, and it's just going to make it overall sluggish. So you could ask your DBA to do that, or you can call EJ Ward support, and we can take care of that as well. So we can go ahead and defragment all of this just by re-indexing it, and then it will come down to a pretty much, I would say, some of our screens that we use a lot, like the transactions, vehicles, and employees, they can be around 50 and they'll be fine. But if they get up to that 75% range or above, typically I like to re-index them and make it just a little bit faster. And that concludes the look at our at-a-glance screen in the FuelView system. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.